So I'd like to welcome everyone to our Pride panel. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jacqueline Romero. I am the Director of Student Engagement, and I will be one of your moderators for today. I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Pat Meda now.
Hello, everybody. We're so happy that you could join us today. We're very excited about this event and can't wait to get started. Thank you.
Thank you. So during this discussion, we will be talking about a variety of topics in this space. Some of them may feel close to home, so if you feel you need to turn off your camera, feel free to do so. We also want to allow a space for community and growth as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. If not, save them till the end. We're going to allow some time for some Q&A at the very end. So again, if you have any, feel free to wait till well. Alrighty, so okay, we'd like to get started. We're very excited about our panel, and we'll get started with intros before we get into our questions that we have lined up for you. So let's see, I have first lined up on my screen. We'll go ahead and get started with Katie.
Hi, everybody. I am Katie Willert, and I am the Executive Assistant to Dr. Jacqueline, President of Pacific Oaks College.
Thank you. Up next, I have Francisco.
Hello, everyone. My name is Francisco Aragon, and I am the Manager of Academic Affairs.
Thank you. Peter.
Hi, everybody. My name is Peter Escalante, and I am the Human Resources Generalist here at Pacific Oaks.
Next, we have Michael.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Lopez-Patton. I'm the Dean of Students here at Pacific Oaks College.
Thank you. And finally, we have Niko next.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. My name is Niko Shahbazian. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. And I am one of the writing tutors at the C.A.R.E Learning Center.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. There you have it, our panelists for today. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some questions. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll go ahead and address them as they come in accordingly. So number one, and this question is for Peter, Michael, and Katie. How did things change or didn't change once you came out? For example, coming out now versus 1985, are there any significant differences? And we can go ahead and get started with Peter.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I think this this question definitely pertains to my experience. I have been out and proud since 1985. I was 18 years old when I came out. And, you know, it was a totally different world back then. In 1985, AIDS, the AIDS epidemic was had just started. And, you know, it meant basically, it was like a death sentence. I remember when I came out to my mom, she took it really hard. And I think she took it hard because, you know, it was a shock to her that her only son was gay, but also, you know, she thought, well, he's going to catch AIDS and he's going to die, you know, really soon. A lot of parents, a lot of people thought that, you know, so it wasn't a question of whether I was going to come out or not. I mean, I was who I was, regardless of what was going on around me. You know, yeah, there was that dark cloud of AIDS in the entire community in 1985, but at the same time, I remember this really strong feeling of community. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and if everybody was involved in ACT UP, which ACT UP was like a grassroots organization that was started to bring awareness to the AIDS crisis. And so I really credit my initiation into social justice with my you know, coming out in that community of when ACT UP was really making headlines and really getting AIDS from, you know, being just a gay disease to, you know, getting more funding for it, making it more acceptable taking away the stigma that was, you know, part of AIDS. So I can't say that, I think it would be easier coming out today, a lot easier. But coming out in 1985 definitely made me the person I am today, and helped form my thoughts around social justice.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate you sharing your story. Next, Michael.
Well, hello, everybody. I did not come out in 1985. I came out, I'd say I'm probably the middle child in this one. I came out in 2001. I was 25 when I came out. But I think that as much as things had changed and progressed in 2001, society was still living in a lot of the same situations that Peter just described. We all grew up with exposure in the media, and the gay character was either the silly comedic relief, or they were some sort of an evil villain, or they were the after-school special who got AIDS and died before this episode was even over. And so it definitely impacted not only my own experience coming out to my parents. I came out to my parents before I came out to the world, and I told them before I even started dating and things. But theirs was a concern of fear. It was very similar to Peter's experience in that regard. And I think we have hopefully changed quite a bit as a society when it comes to living with HIV now, and the way that we go about accepting individuals has certainly changed. And I think that society has, in many regards, still improved quite a bit socially, that there isn't as much stigma. You're no longer the other as much. Certainly in still some circles, not perfect, but I think so. In some regards, I'd say it was easier than maybe what Peter experienced, because it wasn't truly at the height of that time period that was so difficult. But it was definitely still the product of what you saw in the media as far as how the rest of everybody viewed it. And it caused me to delay coming out, because I was so afraid of how I would be received and what that would do to my relationship with my family and friends, etc. So definitely it impacted me for that one.
Thank you. Thank you. Definitely have come a long way, but we still have much more to go, right? Interesting. Thank you, Michael. Up next, we have Katie.
So I am the gay baby gay here. I came out in September 2021 at 33 years of age. So after kind of not knowing some things, but not really kind of officially being out. And it's interesting because when I came out to both my parents, my mother, she was like, okay, and she just was very nonchalant about the whole thing. And my dad, I was living with a man at the time, my boyfriend, and the first thing my dad said was, do you feel safe in the house? Which shout out to my dad. Because and of course I did. He was a very nice man who I was with. And but the other thing that my mother said that was surprising to me was, well, of all the times to come out, I guess now is the easiest time. And while I do agree, we've come a long way, but we're not there yet. And it's interesting, so far since I've come out, I've changed a bit of my gender presentation. I still identify as she, her, but being a little more androgynous, a little more masculine in my style has really attracted some weird, aggressive attention from people, sometimes on the streets in a way that I've never experienced before here in Pasadena. So, it's very interesting being the same person that I've always been, except now kind of having this new experience and really coming up against where we still need work together as a society. But I'm happy to be out. It's a lot better this way.
Happy for you too. Thank you so much, Katie, for sharing that. Okay. Pat, you are on mute.
My apologies. I was saying thank you, everybody, for sharing so much. In coming out, how did your perception of self change? Michael, would you like to answer that, please?
Sure. I would say it wasn't immediate. You know, you don't come out and all of a sudden it's a 180. But I would say that my perception of self, I became more confident, because when you know that you're different and you don't feel that you can tell people, it manifests in different ways. You can be very self-conscious, very self-critical, and it can lead to really negative thoughts about yourself because you've just got this pent up thing inside of you. I would say that coming out built my confidence up in myself, and made me feel much more whole as a person. But it did take a little bit of time. You know, it wasn't just you open up the door and walk out and you're like, okay, everything is wonderful. It took some time because I think we program ourselves for our entire lives growing up to react certain ways in certain situations, and that doesn't unprogram itself in a 5-minute conversation. So I would say that it was a process for me, but it definitely, I am much happier and much more confident in who I am as a person now that I know that I can just say who I am and not have this fear, you know, inside of me.
Thank you, Michael. So much power in what you said, which you shared, was just so significant, you know, coming out. Basically, that's what I heard. Oh man, coming out gave me that power. Coming out gave me that self-confidence, you know, being able to say, hey, this is okay. This is who I am. Okay, if you like it or not, this is who I am. And I'm okay as I am. And the way that you put it into words was just powerful. And I just want to thank you and those who have already spoken and those who will speak for not just being here, but your honesty and keeping it real and sharing on this level. Thank you so much. Kate, would you like to answer that question?
Sure. I think part of me thought that when I came out that dating was going to be easy, and I was incorrect, because dating is still dating regardless. But what I have found is how exhausting it was, and I identify with what Michael had talked about, how exhausting it was to try and fit myself into, like, okay, if I am a woman in relation to a man, like, this is how I need to look. It was always kind of like running in the back of my mind. This is how I need to behave. This, you know, is this attractive to men? You know, like, I think it just was, and I think that's also internalized misogyny and a lot of other stuff that's kind of on top of it. But once I came out and I didn't realize I didn't have to care anymore, it really, for me, made things it's a lot calmer up here, in terms of, like, you know, I get to do things because I want to do them. I'm not constantly trying to fit the square peg into the round hole, if that makes sense. And it also made me realize that coming out is, the whole part of it is not just romantic like relationships. That's part of it, but it's primarily about your relationship with yourself and really understanding, like, okay, who am I? What do I like to do? Who do I like to surround myself with? Where do I feel safe, you know, and comfortable? And then kind of that leads into, you know, romantic attraction or whatever. But I have realized that my friendships have shifted. You know, my relationships with those people in my life have gotten deeper and more interesting. And I've surrounded myself with a lot more queer individuals. And I think that also helps in feeling the most comfortable in being exactly who you are, because everybody is so different. you know, just so different. And, you know, we do have these terms, we have gay, we have bisexual, pansexual, asexual, queer, you know, all sorts of things. But the truth is just each of us are our own person who has their own, you know, wants and dreams and needs and ways in which they express themselves. And so like, that's very overwhelming because suddenly I have to really truly listen to myself in a way that I really didn't before I came out. So that's definitely how my perception of myself has changed, is I get to know who I actually am and what I actually want, you know?
Wow. Thank you for that. Before I pass it on to Jackie, I say to you, yet another powerful message. I think we're going to be getting powerful message until the end, but I couldn't help but to think about those individuals who didn't get to that point, who are still struggling with who they are. And for some reason, the young'uns came into my mind, and how it must be so needed for them to have a safe place, you know, to be able to have these type of conversations, just to know that they're okay. You know, Jackie.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Okay, next question. This one is for Peter, Catherine, Katie, and Michael. How about your relationship with religion? How has that changed? We can also talk about spirituality as well. We can go ahead and start with Peter.
Well, so growing up Mexican American, I grew up in a very, very Catholic household. You know, I made my first communion, my confirmation. I went to catechism. So when around 14 or 15, when I started realizing that I was gay, and the church was telling me, it's a sin, it's wrong, you're going to go to hell. You know, I started hating the church. I really turned my back on religion. It's sort of like, you know, sort of like a child who, when they have an abusive parent, who tells them you're bad, you're nothing good about you. Well, the child is either going to grow up with feeling a lot of shame, or they're going to hate the parents. Well, I was the latter. I hated religion. I was angry, which was unfortunate because I'm a very spiritual person. You know, that anger that I had towards, at the time I thought it was towards God, but it really was towards organized religion, or specifically Catholicism. You know, I carried that with me throughout a big part of my life. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I started going to a church with a gay pastor, and I realized, you know what, religion is not about hate and shame and anything that I thought it was. So I'm just now, you know, in my 50s, beginning to live a spiritual life that, you know, for most of my adulthood, I wanted to have nothing to do with. So it was a big part of my coming out experience.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we will go to Michael next.
This is a tricky topic for me, because, you know, those wounds are deep sometimes when you talk about something you grew up in and believed in. And I was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as the Mormons, for some who know that. And I was a very devout Mormon. I did everything that you're supposed to do, you know, as a young Mormon man, you know, and I actually believed it. So I don't say it was just because of tradition or outside influence. Like, I actually believed what I was doing. And it was a gradual thing for me. I somehow in my mind separated out how I felt with all of the other things that I believed. So, you know, there was that thought of like, okay, we're not so good on the gays, but all this other stuff is amazing. And so I was able to kind of like compartmentalize it. But as I came closer to finally telling people, It was about the time Prop 8 came out, and the LDS Church was huge in promoting Prop 8. And the whole idea of hate the sin, love the sinner, to me, I was like, I've never even held hands with another guy. Why am I still being told hate the sin, kind of a thing? And I started to realize that there really wasn't a separation of that. There isn't a thing as hate the sin, love the sinner. When you're talking about a gay person, they're one and the same. I mean, it's not. So I struggled a lot. I finally made the choice to have to just step away from it because I still have some really deeply held beliefs, but I also had to separate out who I am with what I believe, and recognizing that I don't have to continue to go to church every Sunday to still hold these beliefs in me. And that was a big growth moment for me as well. I started to realize that my spirituality and my belief wasn't predicated upon me physically going into a building somewhere. And so I've been able to carry my own belief with me without still being an active participant. And that was a big thing. But I took an opportunity to get a chance to talk with, for us, we say a bishop, the leader of your congregation. I had actually, when I came out, I told him, and it wasn't in a repentive way. It was just to say, this is what's going on. And he was so open to just hearing me, and I felt so like supported in that. He gave me, it's kind of a negative story, but it's kind of a funny story. He gave me a book called The Miracle of Forgiveness. It's written by a Mormon author, and it's all about how anybody can be forgiven. And he gave it to me out of an act of love. Like, I want you to know you're still loved, And I'm gonna, the book covers a lot of different sins, but there's an entire chapter on homosexuality. That bishop, in the kindness and love of his heart, honestly, nothing negative there. He didn't realize that throughout that entire chapter, it never once referred to any gay man or gay woman, or it simply said pervert. The pervert who does this, the pervert who acts like this, the pervert who believes this. And it was so devastating to read this book that was given to me with the intention of showing me that I'm still loved, how damaging. And so I actually went back to him and I pointed that out. His jaw dropped and he said, I'll never give this to anybody ever again. And that hit me again, because I knew that there was love intended, but it was another reason why I needed to step away. But it was a good thing for me.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you sharing that. That's such a vulnerable moment. And yes, thank you, Peter, as well. You both shared, yes, I'm Catholic myself, and we do have family members who are gay as well. And in speaking with them and sharing with them that, yes, religion, spirituality, this is who you are. I mean, I myself have taken my daughter to Catholic school, but I've always instilled, religion is different from belief, and it's also what you believe in as well. Not everyone may agree with it, and we have to be mindful and recognize those differences. We cannot just pretend that they don't exist. So we're going to have to work through it, and, like Michael said, you believed, but then you also disagreed with some things as well. And that's kind of, I think, where a lot of people may lie, right? Very, very challenging. So thank you both. We're going to move right along to our next question. Pat, if you'd like. Thank you.
Niko, this question is for you. How about diversity within the community and talking about trans versus queer? What are some of the political issues you can identify?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. First off, just wanted to say that I knew that I was queer, and I think trans as well. The second I popped out of the womb, it was just like, bam, I'm here. I don't understand what this heteronormative kind of misogynistic stuff is. I'm really down with it. Don't understand these gender norms. I think I'll credit that as well to my autism. But, you know, being someone who's queer and who's trans and who's a person of color and who's autistic and who's many other things beyond those, you know, identities, means that I am rarely ever in a space. I'm frequently in spaces that serve maybe one aspect of my marginalized identities, but I'm rarely ever in a space that I can bring my whole self into, that really acknowledges the broad level of diversity. And I think that's really important to talk about because identities inform each other, right? Like, I'm not just trans and a person of color and queer as these like separate things. Like, my transness is also about being a Middle Eastern person, someone who's Iranian. The way I express my transness is cultural and vice versa. And they're not separate at all for me. And it's taken a while to get there, right? Because I think the way we talk about identity in the US is so compartmentalized. And so, you know, you're either this or you're that. And usually you can only be one or two things. Anything else is just non-existent, right? But that also means that there's a lot of assumptions about what it means to be queer or trans. I think that's really common from people on the outside, right, who don't know or haven't had much exposure to queer people and trans people. And I think it's also really true from the inside as well, in my own experience. Oftentimes, the most transphobia I've gotten has been from people within the queer community. A lot of cis gay people, right, who don't have the experience of being gender fluid, gender expansive, or trans, and kind of want to limit what queer means, right? And same thing with, you know, racism as well. There's a lot of racism in the LGBTQ community. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, you know, kind of scaffolding and deciding what is queer and what is not, and trying to put boxes and limitations around that, which is really harmful. You know, one thing I'd note too, because a couple panelists mentioned this about things being easier, right? In terms of coming out, I would push back on that and say, who is that easier for? Is that easier for, you know, cis gay white men, maybe, or cis gay folks potentially, you know, but you know, and I agree, things definitely have changed for sure. There is progress in some ways. We are not living in the same AIDS epidemic, AIDS crisis that Peter was talking about in the 80s and early 90s. But by far that trauma is not, I mean, AIDS is still around, but that trauma is not the same here. But I don't think things have like progressed in this sort of like, it was bad and then it's good now. You know, we have gay marriage for sure. But even that is being, you know, debated and kind of pushed back upon with the lovely Supreme Court justices comments lately post-Roe. You know, and at the same time that we have some of these things, I think it's just about context changing. Like, I think there's some things that have for sure improved. At the same time, like, Black trans women are being murdered at an extremely high rate. I don't know, frankly, many trans people of color, period, who have jobs or who have jobs that are high paying, who are able to sustain that. I don't know many structures that are willing to be inclusive for trans disabled people who can't work in the regular, right, systems that we have. Nothing is kind of built for people who exist along multiple points of marginalized identity. And that's really scary. And, you know, I think in my case, like, I don't talk about being trans a lot. I do in spaces with other trans people for sure, but I don't just kind of talk about that identity with folks who don't kind of know what I'm talking about. Because that's a lot of labor. That's a lot to carry, and that's a lot of coming out constantly, right? And I am coming out every single day. When I check how I look and I worry about wearing something that might give someone a different read on my gender or sexuality presentation and potentially make me a target of attack, that's me coming out, you know? I'm coming out to myself and I'm witnessing myself. But at the same time, trying to pass as not trans is a different kind of violence that really wears on the body. But, you know, there's, what's beautiful, I think, is having a lot more space to talk about this. And I think that there are so many incredible, I mean, I'm blessed to be surrounded by incredible trans autistics of color community. And that's what keeps me going, you know, but it's tough, it's exhausting. Being, living and making it through, and, you know, not just living, but really thriving is exhausting, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be exoticized. I just want to exist, right? Yeah, I think that, sorry if I'm rambling, I have COVID.
Oh, beautifully said. You covered so many different things. I don't know if you saw what I saw. People were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, acknowledging, you know, the things that you shared. But I would expect nothing less from my Niko. Thank you for being you. Okay.
Thank you. Well, this next question, if you don't mind, is for Niko as well. We don't want to overwhelm you and whatnot, but the next question is, it is said bias is still present within the community. Can you please describe this? What is the differences between transphobic and transphobia as well?
I'm sorry, Jacqueline, I was coughing. Can you repeat the question?
It is said that bias is still present within the community. Can you please describe this? Also, what are the differences between transphobic and transphobia?
Yeah, I think I touched on a lot of that with the previous comment, you know, just trying to explain that the LGBTQ umbrella is so diverse, and there's so many experiences within that. There is no one way to be queer. There's no one way to be trans. I don't speak for all trans people. I speak for my own experiences, right? But I think regarding transphobia, you know, I mentioned that a little bit within the queer community and ways that shows up. But I think, unfortunately, on a daily basis, that's something that I contend with, you know, pretty constantly, especially when I'm kind of dealing with institutions, right? Or especially when I'm trying to get medical care. There are so many assumptions from doctors or from people who are kind of, you know, have a lot of power, right, over me. They're the ones who are deciding if I get a certain medication or get hormones, or are kind of treated as experts, but who don't know anything about what it means to be trans. Same thing with lawmakers now, who are, you know, passing all sorts of anti-trans bills left and right, or trying to. who have absolutely no context, nothing. They have nothing that tells them anything about what it might mean to be trans and what that experience is like. You know, and I think that means that I'm constantly doing self-advocacy, you know, and I'll give you an example of that. I only realized I was autistic a few months ago. And the way I realized that is through a conversation with a dear friend of mine who is also trans and Syrian. So we share a lot of identities culturally and also in terms of our gender expressions, but also very different. She's a refugee. I don't have that experience. She's gone through a world of trauma, but having her kind of witness my autism was so important because no medical professional was ever going to be able to give me that kind of recognition or the kind of care that I need, right? And that's a really specific example for those who might not be as aware, right? Like autism is kind of seen only within this sort of white male description. So a lot of trans people, probably about a quarter of trans people are autistic. And the way we express that is very different. So it makes sense that I would be kind of witnessed and held and given care by somebody within my community.
Well, thank you so much for that. Definitely, as you mentioned, it's still present within the community. It's, you know, still got a long way to go as well. And you brought up a few things, you know, about so many different, you know, factors and, you know, compartmentalizing certain things as well. And within the community itself, and you would think, you know, from an outsider looking in, that that wouldn't be present, and it's still very much present. So thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Thank you. Francisco, this question is for you. Can you please talk about your experience with intersectionality as a person of color?
So, thank you. Yeah, and for those just in case who don't really know what the term intersectionality is, it was coined by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, and basically it's what has actually been previously discussed right now with Niko, in which like there's multiple identity categories and basically how systems of oppression kind of just distinct those experiences. So like in my case, I'm a cis male, so I have that identity, but I'm a Latino, so that's another identity, and then on top of that, it's specifically Salvadorian, and I'm gay. So it's all these. So society's just gonna view me different, view me in a specific way, and that's obviously gonna basically kind of, in a sense, I'll feel those systems on me. But I think that it's, from my personal experiences, it has been more of like microaggressions. So I think as I've gotten older and kind of been really noticing that, it has been one of those kind of things. I'm like, oh, okay, would you have said that to a white man or a white woman? Or would you have said that to a straight person? Or like, so it's those kind of things that you start noticing, those kind of microaggressions within that. I will say, personally, I do sit in a position of privilege in which I haven't had a really overt experience of racism or homophobia, but that doesn't mean I haven't experienced it either. It's just been me being aware. And it's almost like a societal gaslight, because I'm like, I have to always question myself, is like, would you have done that? But it's to the point where like, no, you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that if it was a white person. You wouldn't have done that if it was a straight person, or you wouldn't have made that comment or made that assumption. because of that. So I think that's been my experience.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a question. This isn't on here, but when you encounter something like that, do you address it? Do you feel that you are in a position and can address it?
It depends the situation as well. Because it is one of those, it honestly just depends the situation. There have been moments where it's just, you just roll it off. Like, just like, I'm just gonna roll it off. Like, what's the point? I have a, like, pick your battles kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I will say, it is interesting though, to note who backs you up, in the sense of like, they call that person out. That's where I'm like, oh, look at you. Because I think that is something really important, because I think there's this, many individuals throw like, I'm an ally, allyship, ally kind of thing. All these corporations are allies, become what, July 1st, those rainbow flags are gone.
Wow.
So I'm like, you're an ally for my money. And so I think it's interesting to see when you're in the room, when you're at the table, and there is that microaggression thrown at you. It's interesting to see who really will be the one who does speak out. Not to say that I need a savior. I don't think, I mean, we all have our voice. It's just making sure that we take that bullhorn from the savior and like, don't speak for me. But it is nice to know that there's that support. It's nice to know that there's a person who comes from the dominant culture, who comes from the one who can actually make that difference. And I hate to say it that way, but it really is like, there's only so much we can do. It's just once you get to the people like at that echelon, that like, okay, thank you kind of thing. Thank you for finally knowing what, I can't even say thank you. It's more like, well, just, it's nice that you finally noticed. It's nice that you noticed there was oppression.
Right.
Good for you.
Very, very, very good point. As a woman of color, I can relate to that. And I'm looking at sister down here shaking her head. I'm feeling you, babe. I know what that means, you know. Niko, your name was on here for this question. I think you answered it. Is there anything else you wanted to say to that?
Sure. Yeah, I can add a little bit more. Just one, I love everything you brought up, Francisco. It's so important. But you know, it's, speaking of assumptions, an example that comes up for me constantly, people assume that because I'm Middle Eastern, because I come from a family, my family's from Iran, right? This big, like, demonized place filled with terrorists and scary people, that my family must be very homophobic and transphobic, and they must have rejected me outright. People ask me that all the time. You know, how are you gay or trans and Iranian? How can those, as if those things just can't exist, right? Together. And unfortunately, like, what that does, that like flattening of experience and those assumptions, is it robs me of my own story, and it robs me of nuance, of being able to actually talk about what's hard, you know. Yeah, it's not rainbows and butterflies, but it's not, I wasn't beheaded, whatever kind of assumptions exist in someone's mind. And it also limits what people think is transphobic too, right? And I think that exists with a lot of oppressions. It exists with racism, right? People think racism is just lynchings and being shot. No, racism is so many other things, constantly woven into systems and institutions. it's the air we breathe. And transphobia is similar, as are lots of oppressions, right? With different nuances of how they're expressed. Some of the most transphobia I've experienced has been from well-educated people who know what trans means, who have read about it in elite academic institutions. That is some of, and I'm talking about a lot of white, well-educated elite academics. Those are some of the places where I've experienced the most transphobia. And I mean, unfortunately, like there's outright violence too, to contend with, and that I'm not gonna pretend that that doesn't exist. I'm often in, queer spaces that are very white, that don't allow room, or I don't feel comfortable talking about experiences as a person of color. And I'm frequently in BIPOC spaces that aren't very trans or queer inclusive, or very disability inclusive. And that sucks, because it means, again, that I have to leave some things out of my total experience. I can't really bring all of it to the table. Or it means that I realize I'm not really willing to sacrifice parts of myself anymore, even if the spaces don't exist, that maybe I have to create the spaces, which is very taxing. It is very hard, especially because, unfortunately, trans POC spaces tend to be filled with a lot of trauma too. These are people who have been through a lot of trauma, and aren't, getting a lot of needs, a lot of resources met. Our world is very violent, even if we are able to come together and create these spaces for ourselves. It doesn't mean that they don't dissolve, because we're repeating a lot of the traumas that we experience. Yeah, there's so much I could say on this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Francisco and Niko. It sounds very exhausting too. We're at a time right now where people need to really put the work in. All these assumptions, everything we come across. Yeah, it sounds very exhausting on a daily basis. So thank you. I appreciate you for sharing that. All right, we're moving right along. Look at the time. My goodness. Thank you so much for all the shares. So let's see. Our next question is, let's talk a little bit about code switching. The way we speak with family and friends versus work. How are they different? And we'll go ahead and start off with Michael.
This might sound funny. I like code switching. I think the piece there, for those who might not know what code switching is, and again, it's your manner of speech, your manner of behavior, it can be different depending on the circles that you're in. When it can be negative is if you are deliberately having to change the tone of your voice or the language that you use because you feel like you can't act your natural self. That's where code switching can be very negative. And in many regards, it can be damaging to you as a person, partially because you constantly are having to check yourself on how you're speaking or how you're behaving around others. I say I love code switching only because I think everyone code switches to a certain extent. When there's that saying, would you kiss your mother with that mouth? It's code switching. You use certain language when you're around certain groups of people that you don't use it around others. Usually it's because of the relationship or the peer level that you have with them. So I think it can be fun. And I think it's, for a lot of us who belong to different, demographics, sometimes you just feel good getting with your people and being able to talk the way you want to talk. And it's like this weight comes off of you. But definitely within the LGBT plus community, there is sometimes for for self-preservation, there is the negative side of code switching. And it can almost be a joke sometimes again around gay men, because we'll say like, oh, you talk like this around us, but then if you get around a bunch of straight guys, all of a sudden your voice drops a couple of octaves and you're like, yeah, hey, how's it going, bro? You know, and that's code switching because you're trying to fit in. But it could also be a way of trying to protect yourself if you're trying to preserve your own safety in a group where you don't feel safe. Code switching becomes like a shield. And so I said there's positive and negatives. In some regards, it's just this freedom that you've got to finally say and do, you know, how you feel comfortable around certain groups. And in other times, it's absolutely a safety mechanism, because you don't know what is going to be said or done if somebody infers based upon your voice or the words that you've chosen that you might not fit in here. So it's a mixed bag when you talk about code switching. But again, I think it is something that a lot of people can relate to, not just LGBT plus individuals, because it certainly happens for the same reasons, right? It can be for safety, or it can be for just because you're around your people, you know, and it's a reality I think that a lot of us face in our lives. And the bad side is just when you have to do it purely based off of a sense of safety, that's the rough part about it.
Thank you. And it's a good point that you bring up. I never really thought about it like that, but as you were saying, in terms of safety, you know, you need to know when and where, you know, you make that switch, you know, definitely need to be mindful with that. Good point. Francisco, same question.
I agree. Like, I think you speak differently depending on the environment. For example, I mean, anyone, especially people who know me and people who work with me know that it's this is the watered down version, but what you see is what you get kind of thing. I will say though that overall though, it is code switching is life-saving. Code switching is the fact that if I go into, so not only, okay, before I get all like serious, I'll say this loud and proud. I know I have a distinctive voice. Sometimes people call it a gay voice, and I say that proudly. But that being said, I know that I can't lower it like that in front of bros. So I'll just stay quiet. And even then, mannerisms is hard for me to not show who I am, because I was born with rainbows and glitter, and I am proud of that. But that being said, it is a safety mechanism. I can't go to certain parts of the country and let people know that that I'm gay. It's not even like with law enforcement. Law enforcement already has a specific point of view just because of the way I look, and because of the way I look, they already know. Oh, that's right. He's one of the good ones, because I don't wear a certain way. I don't talk a certain way. I'm non-threatening. You know, despite being just like, heaven forbid you see me as a human. Go to a different part of the country. I won't even say part of the state. I have to make sure people don't know that they already have this to look at. The moment I open my mouth, then that's where I already know my safety could be is concerning. So it is more of a really life-saving. And I mean, and there's tiers. Obviously, you won't speak the way you speak to your family, how you would with your best friends. My goodness. But at the same time, there's the other tier of the societal oppression that, quite frankly, we all experience at again, going back to intersectionality, a different level of I'm already perceived a certain way just by appearance alone, let alone if I talk, and if I take the wrong turn, because that's a shortcut. So yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. It's interesting how I keep hearing the whole safety mechanism, right? And then of course you bring up, being in different countries and how that is different as well, right? So definitely being mindful of that. Appreciate that. Thank you both, Michael and Francisco. All right.
Thank you very much. And also for the recognition that that it does apply to everybody. I was listening and I thought, I have a PhD. I have a PhD in code switching. I had to, for some of the same things that you talked about, coming from another country and growing up here and surviving, and to be quite honest, being African American and being a Black woman, being a professional, smart Black woman. Definitely, I could talk to you on this level, but we can take it down here and we can talk some pig Latin, or I could, put on my red suit and do whatever I need to do. And I've actually had been told, oh, you don't talk like them. You must not have been born here. You must come from somewhere else. Why? Because of the way that you speak, in a matter of survival. I go down to the hood and do some things you can't do because I can talk the language, So as I listen to all of this, and I'm looking at how it just pisses me off straight off, all the stuff that we as people just have to go through, because we're different and we don't fit into a certain mold. And that's why I really appreciate the openness and the honesty here. And the last thing I'll say on that is my thing is I have book knowledge. I have down home knowledge. I have street knowledge. So I can hold my own there, come up on me in the dark and you won't live to tell the story. That's my street knowledge. And then I have, okay, yeah, let's talk. So the last question we have, and Francisco, Katie, and Niko, how do you heal for you, acknowledge, and celebrate? Francisco, I'll start with you.
It's hard to talk about the healing part. I again fortunate that I'm surrounded by love. But it is one of those kind of things that you do, at least personally, I've always had that whole thing of I kind of think about in Spanish is lo que se ve no se pregunta kind of thing. Like it's obvious. It's obvious, but I think it's that whole thing of well, yeah, it is what it is. I'm not apologetic about it. So, but I think, and I guess that's how I acknowledge it and celebrate it. But I think I also acknowledge and celebrate that there's so much more. We still have a long way to go. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that we must celebrate for not only ourselves, but for our community, for those who cannot be out and proud based off because they're still struggling with their identity, because they are for safety reasons, and to celebrate for those who fought before us and are no longer here. I know it's especially during Pride, that's why it's called Pride, because I'm proud of who I am. And although it is a parade, it really should be called more of a march, because that march, we're still fighting, and we have to fight not just for our LGBTQIA plus community, but for all oppressed people. So I guess that's how I heal, Pat.
Okay. Beautifully said, Katie.
For me, honestly, I think a big part of healing led to me feeling comfortable enough to come out in the way that I did. I'm a little over 9 years sober. And for me, the journey in sobriety has been a lot of uncovering, discovering, discarding, right? Old patterns of behavior, thoughts, feelings, resentments, all of that. And for me, I had a lot of weird shame tied up around my sexuality because of I had only had queer experiences when drunk, when under the influence. And so for me, in doing the work and getting sober, realizing that, like, I would always tell myself, well, it's because you were drunk. That's why. You're not actually, you don't count. Those are not, actually, that's not actually how you feel because you were under the influence, right? And so, you know, it's taken 9 years to kind of clear away a lot of that wreckage, to realize, like, no, those feelings are still there, right? The attraction is still there. And then how do I move forward now as a sober woman to be able to engage with that part of myself? And, you know, there's a line in a piece of literature that talks about sobriety as a program for limitless expansion, right? And that's what I'm looking for in terms of, like, my journey as who I am is like clearing away all the wreckage to be able to go out and be this person I'm supposed to be. And it's interesting. I was watching Paris is Burning a week ago. It's one of my favorite films, and it always, I've seen it probably 20 something times, but at this point, it still breaks my heart. There's one of the character, or not one of the characters, one of the people in the documentary. She is a trans. She's in the house of extravaganza, and she walks in the balls for them. And she's also a sex worker. And she talks about her experiences, you know, being a trans sex worker, right? And the dangers that she's faced, but how she's kind of always gotten out of it. And there's a very hard cut. And then they come back a year later with footage of this woman, and you find out that she's been murdered, right? As a sex worker. And that is the end of so many stories for people of, you know, for trans people of color, sex workers. You know, Niko had talked about the systems with which we're built. There's not support for these people that, you know, a lot of times turning to sex work, and there's nothing wrong with sex work. It's the oldest profession, but we don't have these, you know, we don't care for our people, right? And we heal from that by understanding that everybody's experience is different from our own, and not trying to continually fit unique individuals into systems of oppression that don't serve everyone. And I know for me, I just applied to the master's program here for human development in education and human services. And I wrote in my personal statement, like, that's what I want to do. That's how I'm going to limitlessly expand, right? Is try and create an environment, do what I can in my sphere of influence to create an environment that allows everybody to feel like they are able to be themselves in the biggest, brightest, shining expansion of that they can. And I think that's how we heal, right? It's generation, right? We have to create these ripples for generations that continue on after us. Because I know right now things are flaming hot garbage, and it's hard to get up and get out of bed and go to work and, you know, not be full of rage. But anger is important because it fuels us to move forward, and it makes us change what we're doing and how we do it. So for me, that's how we heal.
Wow. Nothing else for me to say after that. Niko?
Thank you. That was incredibly beautiful. I think right now I am healing by learning how to play, which let me tell you is taken me a really long time to get to this place. It's taken all of the years of my existence to get to this place. And only really recently have I felt like I'm moving from trying to survive to actually thriving. And I am all of these various layers of identities that experience a lot of oppression. And that is also not just the only things that I am. I am also somebody who loves to play board games and getting to really enjoy that and, take time to savor that and take time to savor all of the privileges I do have and all of the beauty that's around me. And I think another way that I heal is by spending time with my grandmas. I have some kick-ass grandmothers. They might not understand everything. I might not be able to talk about everything. But you know what? I can speak languages with them that don't have gender pronouns because the languages that my family speaks as ethnic indigenous minorities to parts of Southwest Asia don't have gender pronouns, are totally gender neutral. And that's incredible. And I come from a really mixed race family too. So I think that there's a lot of implicit understanding in my, bizarre Middle Eastern, Mexican, Filipino, Japanese, white family. That's a blessing. Even if it does mean that I'm doing a lot with, bringing them along with me on my queer and trans journey. And I think also, my main mode of healing is spending time with my people and getting to find those people is such a gift. Getting to spend time, healing time, just playing and not having to talk about all the heaviness and the burden with other wonderful queer, trans, autistic, neurodivergent, disabled people of color is amazing. It's so expansive. It's so freeing. And, going camping with a bunch of these weirdos where we are out in nature and able to be ourselves uninhibited and not have all of these societal gazes on us is, there's nothing else really, there's no other feeling I can really, relate it to. I would say right now, despite all of the heaviness and the trauma that I was bringing up and the challenges, am so free. And I am so proud of myself that I am not afraid of disrupting other people's expectations of what or who they think I should be. And I know I will never compromise myself, parts of myself, to fit into teeny tiny boxes that were designed to suffocate me and frankly to suffocate everybody. And so I play and I make art and I tell stories with other people because I continue to imagine a world when all of us can be free, when the people that I'm talking about right now aren't just visible in this kind of exposing sort of way, but are really witnessed for the amount of magic and power and insight that we bring. And I mean, shit's not going to be the same. It's going to be really transformed when that happens. Yeah, but thank you all. This was really beautiful to hear.
Wow.
Yes.
Blew me away. so glad you're a part of the community. So glad on you doing our interview. Do you remember our interview? Niko, you remember the interview? And I asked you one question. I asked you, what are you looking for what would you like to see in a new work environment? Do you remember what you said to me? Because
I don't remember what I said.
Because I will never forget. And I would like to kind of end that. Do I have your permission to share?
Yes, definitely.
I asked that question in the interview, and Niko said to me, to be accepted for who I am. And I thought to myself, holy cow, he needs to be at P.O. Now, don't get me wrong, he was everything we were already looking for. But everything in me just wanted to scream, you're about to come home and you don't even know it. You know, that's just how powerful it was, knowing what we have here. Knowing that if he got the position, that he would be leaving a space where he has to say something like that to a space that was already welcome for him, you know. And the greatest gift, one of the greatest gifts that you shared with me, Niko, is when you shared with me that you told your partner about P.O. and how accepting it was. And so thank you for allowing me to share that, because that is so important for this community to hear. And I needed you to know that. Couldn't wait for you to get off the screen. Victoria, Victoria and I, and Ruth already know. We looked at each other and like, how many more people we have to interview? Do we really want to interview anybody else? Because you were 100%, you know, P.O. So thank you. And I am just grateful that you had this opportunity, you know, to be a part of this community, you know. So thank you. Jacqueline.
Well, thank you to everyone. That was our last question, but I do want to open it up to some questions from our guests. If anyone has any questions, any thoughts, comments that you'd like to share with our panelists before we close it off. I know we are definitely over time, and I do apologize for that, but I also appreciate you all staying on as well for this discussion. Definitely very powerful. I thank you, each and every one of you, for opening up and sharing and being vulnerable. It sounds like a lot has been experienced, still experiencing, definitely a lot of progress, a lot of change, a lot of movement. And I want to say thank you so much for allowing us to be in this space with you as well.
I'm going to take Jackie up, and I know it's time and we're over, and I thank you, but I forget this moderator hat. I'm just going to talk as Pat right now to you and say, oh my God, I'm so emotional right now. My heart, everything. I may not sleep tonight. I learned a lot of things today, and I am just so grateful to be blessed to be a part of this conversation. And it's because of you. It's because you cared enough, and you are strong enough, and you are brave enough to share from the heart. Every single thing I heard today came from the heart. To share your experience, to educate us, you know. I don't think anybody in here is going to walk away not having some type of feelings. And I want you to know what a difference, I'm going to speak for myself, what a difference this made for me, you know. And I appreciate you so much. And I see you. That's important to me, that you know, I see you. You are magnificent, my little magnificent spell, but this is true, just as you are. And I have relationships that I see pretty much relationships with everybody. So I already know that you are magnificent. So I just want to thank you for keeping it real. I want to thank you for being you. I want to thank you for the gifts that you bring to the world. Never lose sight of who you are and the hell with it, what anybody thinks. Okay, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Anyone else would like to share anything? Let me see what's in the chat box. Oh.
Can I share? I want to share out loud. I was going to put something in the chat, but I want to speak directly to you all. I have a lot to say, but in the interest of time, I just want to say we're in the midst of some major change and disruption, largely because of folks like these great individuals who spoke the level of courage. I've been transformed. I am a proud mama of, I have to tell you, I told my daughter, my adult daughter, that I was in this forum. She said, "Oh, that sounds fun, mommy. This is my daughter who kind of came out to me 10 years ago." And I said, "Oh, well, you know, I'm here for you. You know, just think that's so courageous that, you know, you're identifying as a lesbian." She says, "Mommy, who says I'm a lesbian?" Which is, so that's how my family rolls. Okay, we got neurodivergent, so-called, we got sexually fluid. My daughter doesn't do anything easy. She has a white male partner who is Latinx passing, who is sexually fluid. Okay, so I think it's all very delicious, but I would just say what really, and I said I wouldn't be too long, but I just want to say this one more thing. I think, Niko, everyone really touched me, but I think what you shared is exactly why we need to put the T in its own house. I think the LGBTQIA situation creates so much confusion and ignorance. And even just like you said, even so-called educated folks are just so incredibly just dense when it comes to just what you described. So thank you just for your candor and your brilliance, and your sense of humor is so wicked. I saw you and it really resonated. And I can imagine that that's been a protective factor for you too, because you're just the brilliance coupled with the humor. So all of you, I mean, I could go down the line, but in the interest of time, I'm just, you know, I'm beside myself right now. Thank you. That's all I have to say more. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Glover. Thank you, thank you. Anyone else would like to share some feedback? How about from our panelists?
I just want to say thank you for having me. I think I'm the newest of the PO folks here. I've been here about 3 months and change. And for me, I have never been employed by a place that cares as much about me and my personal development as PO does. And you know, when I first showed up, I'm like, the PO family, what is everybody, what is this? What is everybody talking about? That nobody can be serious about, you know, but it's not just words, it's actions. And I'm really grateful to be a part of the PO family. So thanks for having me on this panel. Thanks for inviting me, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to have you and everyone else here as well. All right. Anyone else? Well, again, thank you so much to each and every one of you. Thank you for those who joined us. We appreciate you. We thank you. And we would love to continue creating spaces like this. Thank you so much for your stories. They definitely resonated. So I appreciate that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Everyone, have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you soon. Good night, everyone. Bye.